This is the problem with the perception of Islam and Islamic finance. It's the I word. In certain locations, it's fine, but in most of the world, it conjures up the wrong perceptions. A few years ago, I was asked, when I was a practitioner, a CEO here, by our central bank to meet with a very senior delegation that was on a private visit from the United States and consisted of members of the State Department and the White House staff who were investigating Islamic finance. My name had been given to them as Daud, vicary Abdullah, which is my Muslim name. So I went up to them. I said, "Hello, are you the gentleman from State Department? My name's Daud, vicary Abdullah." And he looked me up and down and said, "You don't look like an Islamic banker," pardon my American accent. And I retorted immediately, "Who were you expecting? Osama bin Laden?" He fell about laughing, and we got on very well after that, but that was just an example of the misperception. Post-crisis, I think there are two main areas which are very interesting and with views developing. One is in the area of access to liquidity. There's clearly a view that Islamic finance is reasonably liquid, and you're looking at where the money is. People are trying to follow the money and attract it, and therefore are being a little bit more open as to the methodologies that they use in order to attract investments. I think the second area is actually much more powerful, but will take time to build up, and this is in terms of moral and ethical values. You can see from recent history in terms of in the United States and in the UK particularly, some of the major banks have fallen foul of regulators and really based on moral issues in terms of speculation, gambling, market fixing and so on, which has raised issues amongst the man in the street with regards to what are the ethics of these people. When I was growing up in the UK a long time ago, 40 years ago, 50 years ago, the most respected man in the community was the bank manager after the priest. Now, the dogs have a better position than the branch manager. There is a lot that needs to be done to restore faith in the banking system, and indeed in terms of the morals and ethics of the banking system as well. And Islamic finance is starting to be seen as a viable alternative, largely because it's been untouched by the crisis, although I think the scale of Islamic finance has been part of the reason for that. When you're very small, it's not noticeable if there are problems. More importantly, it's around these ethical values, around the real economy, around risk sharing, around doing things which actually make a difference financially. There's a great deal of energy out there. The challenge is getting it lined up and focused on some key areas. But over the last decade, and particularly the last 3 or 4 years, I've seen much more of that energy and focus and levels of collaboration between regulators and practitioners, between countries, which go across border. And I think that this is an area where we still need to work on, we still need to debate and discuss, but I think the mechanisms are there for us to, to continue onwards. If you look at the work the World Bank has been doing recently with paying more attention to Islamic finance, you look at the growth of the Islamic Financial Services Board, which was created 10 years ago, November 2002. And the work that they've done in terms of regulatory standards and supervisory standards. You look at the work that Malaysia has done in terms of both product innovation, but also a fully integrated system with a conventional system as well, and all the depth and breadth that that has created. And the way in which other countries are now looking at Malaysia for guidance and leadership, and the way in which Malaysia is giving it willingly. I'm very optimistic that a solid basis has been formed and will continue to be formed, but we still have a long way to go. Less than 1% of global assets are Islamic, yet 25% of the world's population are Muslim. Well, INCEIF was founded in 2005 in response to a Malaysian situation where Islamic finance had grown very rapidly, and there weren't enough skilled resources to fuel the growth. And indeed, at that time, I was the CEO of an Islamic bank, and I was knocking on the door of the central bank saying, "Where are the people?" And INCEIF came out of that. It's a postgraduate university. We only deal with postgraduate degrees. We have three main platforms. One is a chartered Islamic finance professional, and that's a master's equivalent, which is very much focused on the industry. The curriculum is driven by the industry and vetted by the industry, and the idea is that we produce graduates who can hit the road running going back into the industry. The volume still isn't there. I mean, you know, INCEIF can produce 150 people a year, and we hear reports about demands for several thousand, and indeed the reports are getting larger numbers out there. So there is a capacity issue, and we're looking at how we can alleviate that. The second issue is still one of perception around Islamic finance, and by that I mean, you know, a little knowledge is sometimes dangerous. So when people, you know, fully realize the potential of Islamic finance, they actually can realize that 80% of what they've learned as a conventional banker is probably relevant, and it's about the conversion. So it's not just a case of the education channels and institutions like INCEIF. It's about large organizations learning how to use the existing resources and converting them over to doing Islamic finance. And this can be done by some of the courses we run here. In fact, a good majority of our students are fairly mature in their 30s and 40s and industry professionals looking to get up to another level. The other way of approaching it is by doing executive programs of short, sharp shock treatment, if you like, to help open people's eyes that it's not about going back to ground zero and building up again. A great deal of experience that you've gained as a professional banker or insurance person or as an accountant or as a lawyer is extremely relevant and a very good background. I mean, you know, myself as an example, I grew up as a conventional banker. And went through a process of conversion and learning some things around Islamic finance 20 years ago. Sadly, there wasn't an INCEIF then, but fortunately there were some people and some organizations that could help me. They're dedicated to poverty alleviation globally, and they want to make a connection to see how Islamic finance can help alleviate poverty and demonstrate more financial inclusion. So through a combination with ourselves and the World Bank, where we look at certain research topics which we can collaborate with them on, and also some of our educational programs, where particularly executive programs, where we can assist in getting the message out about what Islamic finance does, is really the thinking behind us. And we now have some concrete programs which we agreed very recently with the World Bank, and we'll start rolling out very soon, which are very much focused on areas of Islamic finance, financial inclusion, and if you like, getting back to some concepts around the real economy. The real economy being one where, you know, you invest money and you physically build something which creates jobs and generates revenues for people, rather than a speculative economy. The model we're following is one of collaboration with other universities around the world and central bank training establishments, whereby we collaborate with them and effectively they take our programs and we train the trainers, or we embed the programs with them, and that seems to be a more cost-effective and win-win situation. I do see opportunities in future, in fact we're looking at one right now, where on the basis of language we would set up a centre somewhere else. However, our classes are taught in English because we're making an assumption, and we think a correct assumption, that English is the business language. But clearly there are other languages out there which we need to address, and can't assume that everybody has a level of competency in English and therefore would be excluded from learning more about Islamic finance. I think it's a combination of recognition and quality, and let me explain that. It's in a way an issue about how Asia is perceived by the rest of the world, both in terms of business and in terms of education. So the recognition, whilst in the world of Islamic finance, Malaysia is certainly recognized as a global leader, there isn't the same recognition with regards to educational establishments. So joining up the dots, if you like, in saying, well, actually, we've probably got the strongest faculty in the world, and I would say not probably, we have, with 15 full professors who do nothing but Islamic finance. What we have to do is get the recognition for that quality and maintain the quality. So it's a combination of getting the word out that what we do is really good and proving we can deliver it and consistently deliver it and improve on that quality. And that's a combination of, if you like, word of mouth. You don't build a reputation like Harvard Business School in 5 or 6 years. It takes decades. It's also a combination to be combined with the industry themselves. If the industry starts saying we would prefer to have graduates from INCEIF, and some of them are, even in their advertising, then that enhances it. But on the other hand, you've still got to deliver the quality in terms of your faculty, the research, the content and delivery of your programs. So it's an ongoing challenge, the recognition and the quality.